Hi, YouTube legends, welcome back to the CRH Climbing channel. Today we're going to look at doing some shaping to make climbing holds. So let's talk about some of the tools that we use to shape the climbing holds. So first off, it's always good to have a saw so you can hack back all the excess material. Then I use this mean machine, which basically is a file, and you can carve it out, carve the foam out. Then when we're getting more intricate, we can use, these are just like tools for shaping clay to do like sculpting. So I have a whole tub of them, get them cheap as off the internet, but these are just a couple of ones. This one's pretty cool for scooping out things. Then there's a Dremel that's just got like a little grinding attachment. It just absolutely mows through the foam. It's perfect. I've got like the main motor sits up here, and then I've got the attachment so that I'm not holding this bulky guy. Pop that back up there. Then this is really important. This is sandpaper, but it's got a foam pad in between so you can get around things or, contour. So, if you're using just a normal piece of sandpaper, like the edge can gouge into it and end up damaging your model. So that's why these are really good. We've got some more here, different grades. You can get them from your local hardware or order them in. Yeah, and then there's some drill bits, an old snapped off hacksaw blade, anything. You could use a spoon, a knife. It's really up to you how creative you want to go with it. But they're just some of the tools I use to make the shapes. Alright, next, probably the most important thing is safety. So when you're sanding and shaping the foam, you get a lot of foam particles which you can easily breathe in. So it's highly recommended and encouraged that you use a respirator. Okay, so this is a A1 class. I don't think I have any foam in my lungs, but anyway, even just a standard dust mask is going to be better than nothing. Even if you're doing it outside, you're still going to have that stuff floating around in the air. Other thing is always have a shop vac handy so you can clean up as you go, so you're not just building up with a big pile of foam particles sitting there and then you bump it and then they're in the air. So as you go, just vacuuming up. And hot tip, use a vacuum bag. That way you're not clogging up the filter in your vacuum with all the foam particles and everything. You're just collecting it into that bag. Once the bag's full, you can in the bin, put a new bag in, you can keep going. Or if you're going to change jobs, I've got a wet dry vac. That thing, if I decide to go and back up some water or something, like you don't want your water and foam mixed together because then you can't tip it out in your yard. You really just want to dispose of this high density polyurethane rigid foam particles. You just want to get rid of it because it's not good. Okay, let's talk material. So I use polyurethane rigid foam. So a few different places you can get it. Can be a bit challenging to get it, or you can actually make your own as well. You just need to buy the part A and part B. Need a form, and then you mix it together. It expands, and then you've got your big block of foam. And that's when you cut your shapes out and whatnot. Starting out, this is dry floral foam. It's quite soft, So this is super easy to shape, super easy, or super good for when you're starting out. It's you can basically shape it with your hands, like, you know, get a rough shape, and then you can, you know, massage it with your hands, and you can really get the shapes happening with this. So that's where I started out, and you know, I think I went to my local hardware and bought like 6 of these, and I was able to make my first lot of holds. So they do have a lot of air bubbles in it, because, you know, this isn't like proper like sculpting foam. This is designed for florists to shove flowers and crap in it, so it's not really the purpose, but I tell you, it works, and it's a great place to start because it's cheap. So moving on from that, this is a higher density one, so it's, you know, I can push in it. It does put a little dent in it, but like, you really need to cut and sand this stuff, but you're going to end up with like a really defined climbing hold shape with this stuff. I do prefer to use this stuff. You can actually get from art supplies blocks of this foam, which is super high density, which is like, this is what they use to shape sculptures with, so it's exactly the right material, and obviously it has the little, when you make your mold and you pour the plastic in there, it comes out feeling rough like sandstone, or if you get real intricate with your shaping, you can make it feel like granite. Perfect medium for making your model. I actually sourced big blocks of this foam from a insulation place. They do insulation for like refrigeration, paneling, insulation for pipe work and whatnot, and I just hit them up for offcuts, and I ended up with big blocks of it, which leads me to the next foam, which is also from the refrigeration insulation place. And I was able to get a couple of cylindrical shapes. This is like the center of where they would have had a large round, and they've punched out the center like an apple corer, and that's the leftover bit. So I got a couple of these as well from the same place. This is not as dense, so this is quite similar to this. So I'm yet to make a climbing hold out of that, so I think we'll go with this one today, because I'm keen to see how it shapes, how it works. So yeah. Aside from that, you can use clay, but then you need to come up with your texture. So it's up to you, but I've had the best luck with this stuff, and today we'll find out. I'm pretty sure it's going to be similar to this, so let's see. So the first thing we need to decide is, what are we going to make with this cylinder? Got a few options. I can cut it up into pieces, into blocks, sensible size blocks, and I can make holds that have a footprint like that. I'm thinking slopers or jugs, or you can make pocket holds with these. Another option would be to make maybe 1, 2, 3, and then save this, but cut it that way, so we get 2 long, like, sloper hold rungs. Then work with that. So I think I'm going to go with that option to start with, because I have a second cylinder that's actually a little bit bigger, so I could make a whole set that had 4 long holds with 1, 2, 3, and then 6 individual holds with 4 slopey rails that can be matched. So let's get our safety gear on, and we can start chopping this guy up and we'll go from there. So now I've got a rough shape. So I've hacked out a lot of the, it was a cylinder before, so now we've got a shape to work with. So this is when we start using the sandpaper to smooth it out, and we can also start giving it features if you want, or you can just have a nice smooth round feature. A lot of commercial gyms, a lot of the holds are just like basic rounded or geometrical shapes, but then the other end of the scale, like kilter grips for example, like super realistic granite and sandstone features. So I like to try my hand at sandstone because where I live there's a lot of sandstone, so I've got a lot of inspiration. But sandstone's different everywhere you go, but it generally has similar features, so I don't know, we'll see what happens. Sometimes it's best to just make the shape and then just go with what you're feeling at the time. Alright, so off camera I continued to shape the rest of them into workable shapes. Very rough, ready for sanding and additional shaping. So with this one, to get that groove, I use this in that pattern and just basically just carved it out, and then use this to smooth it. All the rest of them, I only use that to like get this divot, I just worked that. Get a nice divot there. I don't know if it comes up in the camera, but that's going to be a nice sloper. But you can give something to hold on to there. It's not the best, but you know, on a vertical wall it'd be great. Anything over 20 degrees and I think it's struggle town. But good for compression. Same with this guy, but you could just about pinch that, but it would be a really crap pinch. So obviously that's a bit of a, you can just grab that. This, well, I guess it's a little bit of a volcano, isn't it? I was thinking about turning it into a pocket. Haven't decided yet. Might continue with the slopers though. Make the whole set slopers only. So I'm not really known for making jugs or nice holds. All the holds in my range are pretty average. Swinging more to the heinous side, but that's what it's all about, right? Anyway, let's move on to the next step. Another thing I forgot to mention before is with the offcuts, we essentially have the basis of another smaller climbing hold here. So I don't chuck these out, I chuck them in a bucket and I come back to them because I could make a foothold or a small handhold, or I could make another hold out of that. So it's always good to keep the offcuts for that very reason. So this next step is a good opportunity to think ahead to where you're going to put your bolt hole, your screw holes, where you're going to insert your little logo there, maker's mark. And also if you did want to start to modify it in the sense like, you know, it's a pretty good sloper at the moment, but maybe you could make that into like a slopey pinch by scooping out this backside more. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to keep the sloper thing because, you know, with these you can basically pinch them. So I think it's, I mean, you can pinch that anyway, but like, you know, overhanging wall, good luck. You know, strong people out there. Just a good opportunity to just mark out, all right, that's about the center. I like to try and get my bolt holes as close to center as possible, so you maximizing the like centrifugal pull to the wall. You know, if you put your bolt hole over here, like, and you don't put a set screw in, you're guaranteed to have a spinner, and no one likes a spinner. Except for like kids with those spinner things. They like spinners, but when it comes to climbing, no one likes a spinner. Okay, so I'm going to look here at, I like with my holds, especially the ones I've been making recently, I like to have, for a hold this size, I will add 4 screw holes, so they're not just a set screw, they're also used so you don't need to rely on the bolt hole. You can just screw this anywhere on the wall, because me personally, I hate T-nuts. They are the bane of my existence on my climbing wall. Like, they get jammed, T-nut comes loose on the back of the wall, and then it's a 2-person job just to remove the hold. And sometimes you have to angle grind it just to, you know, save your hold. You end up with a big gouge out of the back of your wall. Personally, I don't like them, so that's why I add the option to have 4 screw holes. If it's a bigger hole, add more screw holes. But any sort of hole, if you're not going to have a bolt, 3 screws is probably as low as I'd go. You can get away with 2 if it's a small crimp, but you want to have at least 3. But 4 will hold this on the wall totally comfortably. So I'm going to put some marks on there where I think I'm going to sand over this anyway, so these will disappear. It's just so I know, I've got a rough idea, because if I start doing some sandstone patterns in here, I know not to do it over where the screw holes are going to be, so I can leave those bits blank. It's just thinking ahead. So something to note with the screw holes is you don't want to have them too close to the edge. You want to give them a little bit of meat so that when you're screwing in, it leaves room for your embedded washers that you put in before you pour the plastic. If you have it too close to the edge, the washer can stick up out of the back, and then you end up sanding half of the stainless steel washer off, and like, you know, that's a waste of money, like, and it doesn't do its job properly. So yeah. And I think with this one, just the nature of it, I would probably be sticking my logo somewhere right front and center, so when you grab it, you're looking at my logo. So spend a bit of time sanding it. You've got like a nice smooth line happening there. At one point I did notice that there was a divot here, and rather than just sanding for ages and ages, it's just quicker to get this guy and hack it out and then start sanding again. So I don't know, I like that shape. Tossing up whether I bother putting any sort of features in or just leave them nice slopey basic slopers. I think they look pretty good the way that they are. So another thing that can do is you can use a brush to put like sort of like a sandy brush, give it more of a rough texture. You want to be careful not to go too overboard with that, because it will make the finished product super rough, like actual rock outside, which is fine if you want to toughen your skin up. But I have been told that, you know, some of my earlier holds, I went a bit hard and I took them to a climbing gym and I'm like, here, can you guys try these holds? And they looked at it and went, ooh, that's going to have some complaints from some of our climbers. And I'm like, what? That it feels like rock? But to me, I like the feeling of rock, and that's why I go outside, and when I train, I want it to feel like rock. Some people, however, do not have the same opinion as me about that, so, you know, I'm not only making these for myself, I am making these for other people to use as well, so it is important to keep that in mind. So a little bit of brushing to give it a little bit more texture, especially on a sloper. You know, you want this is a very friction dependent hold, so maybe a bit of brushing on this hold will be appreciated compared to something that's a jug, and if you're throwing to it and then when you hit it it's just gonna rip the skin off. Like, I get it. So yeah, we'll see how we go. Next step, I'm yet to decide. I'm going to sand up all the rest of these. I will also, I have some finer grade sandpapers, and I will work all of these holes through the different grades. I only have 3 grades. You know, at the end of the day, like, they are climbing holds. They are supposed to be a bit rough, so you don't necessarily want them to be like super smooth, like a polished finish, because, you know, you're just going to be sliding on off those things. So especially this guy. Yeah, so I'm going to get to work on them and I'll come back and we'll have a look at the next step. Sick. So I've been through the 3 different grades that I have. Sucked all the crap out of them, used the blow the crap out of them as well, and at this point you go up to the light. Well, I've been doing that as I've been sanding, just looking for divots, ridges, anything that you don't want there, because the silicone picks up everything, and you know, it looks good now, especially in my dingy ass lighting situation in here, but I have noticed it where I've gone rough enough's good enough and chucked it in, poured silicone, popped this out, turfed it, and then poured the plastic, and then you catch it in a certain angle and you can just see this little ridge, and to me, it drives me insane, knowing that all I had to do was just run the sandpaper over that 1 or 2 more passes and that ridge would be gone. So these, I can guarantee you there'll be some imperfections in these holds. There always is, and it really depends on how long you want to spend going over it and over it with the sandpaper, vacuuming the crap out of it, blowing out all the little cavities, inspecting it with a fine-tooth comb. Like, really, well, I can see a ridge there now. So you know, you just got to get it in the right angle, on the right light, you know, and you'll spot them. But as far as these go, they're just about ready for me to drill holes, put in the set screw holes. I have my mate Gavo printed these for me, little logos. So I just bore out I think it's 16, 19 mil for this size, perfect. I just bore that nice and straight, and then I just insert them into the foam, sand around it, looks great. Anyway, so these are just about ready for the next step, which is building a box around it and pouring in the silicone. So that's the process I use for shaping. Obviously, like, I'm going to leave these. I'm not going to bother getting tricky and putting sandstone shapes or anything like that. I think they're going to be fine just to be smooth line shapes. I will, however, show you what I'm talking about with the brushing. So we'll just pop these to the side. I'll grab this big sloper here. So this is actually just this is a Metolius climbing brush, one of the vegan ones. It's got the narrow, and then it has that. I think I found this, or my partner found it out at a crag somewhere. It was just there. Like, normally it was a pretty remote crag, so we picked it up. But I've repurposed it and I use it for this. So simply to give it that brushed, just really just going to run that brush in a nice smooth line. You just want to emulate the nice smooth line texture that you would naturally find on the rock, and go from end to end, nice and smooth, applying even pressure all the way across. And you can't see it, but trust me, it's there, and it's going to make a massive difference, especially on a sloper hold that you're relying purely on the friction. So I'm going to keep doing that with these nice, smooth, straight lines. Now I'm just starting to ease the pressure off a little bit. Remember what I said earlier, you don't want to go too hard with this. Otherwise people cry. We don't want people to cry. We want people to go, man, that's a good hold. So just come around. So as you can see on the tip of the brush here, it has actually removed some foam. Not much, but it is just enough. And looking at the foam, you'd never know. You'd never know. But once you get the silicone is going to pick that up like you would not believe. It's amazing what silicone picks up. Like if you accidentally drop this now, it's going to have a tiny divot. You might not see it. Silicone's going to pick it up. So I guess that's another point. At this point, you want to treat these like precious china. Like you don't want to drop it. You don't want to frisbee it around. Like they are fragile, and the moment you drop it or dint it, you're back to sanding, or you're cutting it and redesigning the shape. So anyway, I think I'm going to wrap this video up now. Anyone who stayed for the whole video, I really appreciate it. Consider subscribing. Definitely consider liking the video, especially if you learned something from it. If you're interested in shaping, or if you do shape and you want to leave a comment or tell me where I'm going wrong or thank me for my advice, then I'd really appreciate that. But in the meantime, I hope this video has been helpful, and happy days. CRH out.